You're listening to us right here on Channel Africa, giving you news, information, and entertainment from an African perspective. Today, we're going to be looking at a very intriguing conversation indeed. A divorce is usually between two people, and probably only the two of them would understand while they're going through that process. It's a deeply personal and often difficult season, yet in many societies, it continues to attract stigma and ridicule. One common expression that reflects this label in South Africa is one that is a term we know as return soldier, frequently used to describe individuals who've gone through a divorce. Palisa kind of gave us a great example there, saying that when you return soldier is because usually it is attributed to a woman who's going back home to their mother's home, their father's home of origin, and people, when they look at them, oh, he's returned, they're a returned soldier. But it does have some damaging effects, and it does have a broader societal implication, right? To help us on this one, we're joined by Jabu Zwane, who is a mindset development specialist and executive coach. Jabu, welcome on the show.
Are you there, Jabu?
Good morning.
All right,
good morning
fantastic.
So much. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We can hear you very clearly, Jabu. Let's talk a little bit about divorce in its context. Divorce is not easy, right? Going through a divorce means that you failed at something that you were once probably excited about. You wanted it to work. And for many people, they describe it as one of the most difficult seasons of their lives.
No, absolutely. I mean, it is. It is in the top 5 most difficult human experiences, especially changes. Partly because you have made a decision to spend the rest of your life with someone and to build something, that a family, a legacy, a life, and that comes crashing after you've given up so much of who you are for this institution and for this person. So yeah, absolutely, it's very difficult.
You know, we can't speak about divorce, Jabu, without speaking about marriage itself, particularly marriage in our African context and some of the things that happen around marriage. In fact, the mindset of marriage, right? Ben said earlier, hey, there's this notion that the man is there to save the woman from maybe the poverty of her family or that life and take her in to be in the home. And then she's seen to have failed once the marriage is ended or is dissolved. But there's so many traditional aspects that actually bring in and perpetuate why we say these nasty things to people and women in particular after they decide to end their marriage. So for example, I know in many South African contexts, when the marriage is happening, the traditional aspects of marriage are happening. A woman is sat in a room with other women, older women, the aunts, the uncles from the father's side and the mother's side of the family to say, hey, these are the things that you should do in marriage. A divorce is not an option. When your husband comes home late, just fix him a plate. Don't ask him questions. Mosadi tshwara thipa ka mo bogaleng, which means that a woman holds a knife on the sharp end. So don't give up. You must hold on until your hands bleed. These are the things that we tell women in societies. And the fact that, you know, marriages here in Africa aren't just about the partners themselves, but they about the men's family, the woman's family, and the community at large. Why are these harmful when it comes to the stereotypes that we then see once a divorce happens?
I mean, I think one of the points you've already alluded to is that it places so much responsibility of the success of marriage on a woman and what a woman is able to forbear and what she's able to do. And unfortunately, what also it does is that it also sort of gives men the impression that they don't have to do much to build or to sustain a marriage.
Right.
So a woman would have a conversation where she's told this is what it means to be a wife throughout her life, but then we don't have those same conversations. There's also an element where we, as far as a metric of measuring a woman's value, has a lot to do with her being a wife. But that's not the same metric that we use to actually measure a man's manhood being a husband.
Sure.
And so what you end up happening is you have two people that are coming into marriage. One is prepared more to be a wife, which is typically a woman, And a man is not necessarily prepared or knows more about being a husband except only to provide, to protect, and to lead. And normally leading is telling a woman what to do more than it is about collaborating and consulting to see how best you can build a marriage. And that's why it makes it so harmful, because then when it's over, it's really a situation where we say, well, it's a man's fault.
Yeah.
And it's always, well, if he did something wrong, you should have forgiven. And then what did you do? What did you not do? And then that's why it feels like it's a battlefield, I suppose, for women. Hence, probably the term then a returned soldier. Maybe she did really go into a battle that she wasn't aware of.
Yeah. And it's also around the stereotypes that we have around marriage, because, yeah, we always attribute marriage as that place of a war zone, right? It's that moment where you have things to fight for. And we've always stereotyped marriage as something that is difficult to achieve. It's funny when you speak to people and you're like, what happened in terms of when you were living with this person and you guys were not married, but all of a sudden you guys are married, you've been living together while married, and someone says it changes everything. But I'm like, you guys are the same people. What does the label do? Is it because we have these stereotypes around marriage that we create and coin these terms like returned soldier?
I mean, that's part of it. But I think what the main point is that a marriage is an institution, and it does tend to have different rules of engagement than just being a boyfriend and girlfriend or just being partners.
Sure.
There are certain understandings as far as duty, as far as building a legacy, as far as building a family, and the commitment that's required for you to be either husband and or wife. And so the expectations immediately change, even within people themselves, outside of the societal pressures and stereotypes. There's a shift in your mind when you wake up the next day, and the idea that now you are a husband or you're a wife. And what that idea is then becomes the challenging aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to test your commitment, it's going to test your patience, it's going to test your collaboration. I was told when I was getting prepared to get married by my pastor, being counseled, that it's gonna probably be the most testing experience for my selfishness. My selfishness will be put to the test more than anything in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna learn more things about myself as far as living with people than anything that I've ever experienced in my life. And so, even outside of the stereotypes, it's important for the individuals enter into marriage to sort of be aware of what happens to them internally in terms of the mindsets, emotions, and also the psychology.
All right, we'll come back to the theme. I think we've built a bit of a backdrop of why we're having this conversation. We're speaking to Jabu Zwane, mindset development specialist and executive coach. We're speaking on a term that is usually used in South Africa. I'm sure there are many other terms in different African countries. Returned soldier, describing individuals who've gone through a divorce, and it's usually derogatory, it's usually very shaming, and we'll continue to unpack it after the break. Stay with us.
Yo. Listen up. Channel Africa is taking the digital game higher.
Check it out.
We are taking our digital platforms to the next level. For you, our loyal listeners.
You know where we at, right?
New website, a fresh new app, and they're on fire. Anytime, anywhere listening, Channel Africa brings the African sound to you.
It's the bomb, yo.
Stay locked. The future is crystal clear with us. Your new way to experience Channel Africa is almost here. Africa, stand tall and get ready.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palisatawo
On the move.
The returned soldier comes home with nothing but the bags and the clothes
From
on her
a
back
war zone.
from the war zone of marriage, only to come home to be shamed by family, community members, and friends alike. We're speaking about the damaging effects of the labels of divorcees on the African continent. Jabu Zwane continues to have this conversation with us. He's a mindset development specialist and executive coach. Let's come into the divorce itself, right? You spoke about the tests tests of the marriage, the test in commitment, the test in this and the other. And those tests happen and they may not be successful. So there comes a point that is quite difficult for most people who have gone through a divorce, Jabu, to say, you know what, I actually do have to just end this marriage. Sometimes proposed by one partner, sometimes proposed by both, to say it will be best for us to leave it. But before that, there's always that part that says we should be trying for the sake of the kids, for the sake of this and the other. So divorce is usually the very last option for many, many Africans. I want us to come into the term itself. We're using the term divorce soldier from the South African perspective, but I have an inkling that there are probably similar terms all across the African continent that shame people and women in particular for being divorced. Why are these terms harmful? Because sometimes people don't leave marriages for the fear of being called these things.
I mean, a big shaming one is one of most human beings are afraid of, and that is failure. So, and unfortunately, as I've said, so much responsibility of to carry and sustain the marriage is being put on a woman. When it fails, then normally we typically blame her, and then she normally then is viewed as somewhat of a failure. And the other part of it is also what you mentioned earlier on, this idea that when a woman gets married, she gets rescued from some kind of a woe, a woe of poverty, a woe of not being valuable. Like
Yeah.
if you married, then your value sort of increases in society. And when you divorce, that decreases because you're a failure, and also you're not good to be. You're not a marriage material. And then the last part, I think, is what we're talking about. This whole idea that marriage is a battle. It's a battle of power structures, and I think that is a problem of a presupposition before somebody gets into marriage. If you're thinking that you're going to lose something, if you're thinking that you're going to lose, then you're going to get in there then to try and gain and to win something. Unfortunately, that basically means that winning over the person that you're in a relationship with, and to do that, it means you're going to have to wrestle them to get your way, which then, I suppose gives a very bad start to marriage.
Yeah.
Hence the terminology of being a soldier.
There's obviously various reasons why people get divorced. It is, case per case. Sometimes there's abuse in the marriage. Sometimes it's like financial issues. It can, infidelity can go on and on and on. But let's speak about why it is harmful for people to think about not getting a divorce simply because they know how they'll be stigmatized and even treated. Because these aren't just words. They come hand in hand with actions, with treatments on yourself and even your children sometimes once you get divorced. So if we further use these words, if we further perpetuate these stigmas, why could that be harmful for people who are in marriages that they need to get out of?
I mean, the worst part of that is that, of course, as we know in South Africa, is femicide. Somebody loses their life. Somebody gets, violated in a way that psychologically they're not able to recover.
Yeah.
The other part is, let's talk about the children. Children are very impressionable, and they're depending on us as adults to show them how to live the rest of their lives. And so when they're observing an environment that is unhealthy, then it is conditioning them to stay in harmful environments. And if they see a person that should ideally be, saving themselves by leaving from the physical harm, psychological harm, financial harm, then they learn at those impressionable stages that they should stay, and they should be bullied, and they should be oppressed, and they should be violated in all sorts of ways that they're seeing. Or unfortunately, they actually learn that you should protect yourself against that and fight against it, and they go to the extreme end, where then they become very cynical, and they're hyper vigilant, and they are defensive and offensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really perpetuates a lot of dysfunctional behavior, and it continues from one generation to the next, and it's almost like then it's hopeless, because then there's no end in sight in terms of ending that cycle.
Yeah. It's a challenge to be in that situation where you already feel like you failed at something. divorce is not easy. For other people, they feel like it's a moment of a breakthrough. So people deal with divorce in very different ways, right? I'm thinking about those people who get labeled as such. How would we advise them?
Look, first of all, it's important to see society for what it is and not what you hope for it to be. So expect that when you do come home, people are going to say what they're going to say. Prepare yourself to regulate your emotions, to regulate your psychology, so that you're not reactive, and the worst, that you are not accepting all of those labels, and then they start to really mess up with you, with your mental well-being. You start becoming depressed and becoming anxious. So prepare yourself that this is what's going to happen. And I would say, part of it, if you can, get some kind of intervention on how to prepare yourself for that from a professional counselor, therapist, psychologist.
Yeah.
That can help you to prepare emotionally. Because if you're not prepared, then it's going to destabilize you. So, and then second, and then the lastly is that when you can and when you are able to, speak your reality. Speak your reality and live your reality,
Yeah,
as
love
opposed
that. Sure.
to trying to pretend that it didn't happen, and then you're acting as though something happened that did not happen. Speak your reality so that at least if there is any kind of counsel, advice, wisdom you can pass on, then people can be able to learn from it. And then lastly, of course, why you left. Remind yourself of those
Yeah,
reasons.
absolutely.
And live that. Let that be what guides your experience of transitioning into being single again, and looking for love, if that's what you're gonna then decide your next step is going to be.
Yeah. You say something so powerful, like, get counsel, get help, and speak to someone. Because when marriage begins, many people and many couples go and seek those counsel, right? They go to, marriage preparedness, whether it's for a pastor, a therapist, a psychologist. But throughout the relationship, they don't seek that counsel, sometimes from family members. And also at the end, you started something by going to those who could help you psychologically or just prepare socially, but afterwards you don't go to anybody. In the same way that community shows up for your marriage, I don't think we show up for each other just as much for divorce. So how important is it as well to surround yourself with community that's not particularly there to judge you, but that you can have active counsel with, even if it's not your family or friends, just a professional sometimes?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I'd say this to your point about during marriage. It's important that you keep your relationships of support and not isolate yourself and completely give yourself to this institution, to the alienation of your existing support structure. Number one, because you're going to need that the second time around. And maybe if you haven't had that, now you've divorced, there are communities online where you can be able to get support. Educate yourself about psychologically, emotionally, what you're going through. Because one of the worst things that does happen is that there is trauma, and trauma is when something completely unexpected happens and then it destabilizes your entire psyche, and then you're literally having to relook everything differently from a different angle. But you don't know what those aspects are. You don't know what those aspects are. And so, what I would say is, learning, and having language for what you're going through helps you with processing that mentally, and then also being able to regulate your emotions. So speak to people that have gone through what you've gone through. Educate yourself as a way of empowering yourself in terms of how you can handle the situation, and then of course, I mean, you give yourself a lot of grace.
Yeah.
Failure, not sometimes missing the target, not being able to reach what you are trying to reach as a human being is normal. So it's okay. Just because it's marriage, it doesn't now all of a sudden put in a special category that you become a special kind of failure, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes we
Absolutely.
miss it, and it's normal, and it's human. It's human.
Yeah.
All right, we have to wrap it up there, Jabu. Thank you so much for engaging with us. Just really quickly, we've run out of time. Let us know where we can find you.
At Jabu Zwane Talks and jabuzwane.co.za. So that's my handle on social media, at Jabu Zwane Talks. or jabuzwane.co.za.
Thank you so much. That's mindset development specialist and executive coach Jabu Zwane, unpacking some of the damaging effects of labels that are put on divorcees,
Yes.
but also how you can navigate that divorce structures, both societally but also as yourself. So hey, there is help out there. We'll chat about it a little bit later on. It's 10:31 Central Africa time. Let's bring back Fikile Lengwadi for our latest sports.
Sports on Channel Africa.
The African Perspective.